And welcome back, students. We're now going to do another exercise in Illustrator. So to get started, let's go ahead and make a new document here. And when we go ahead and make this document, if you remember before we went ahead and worked in the web interface, let's go ahead and continue to do that. And I'm going to, again, keep the settings as they are and click on Create. So in here, I have my document like I did before. And what I want to do this time is make something that maybe is representative of a logo for, let's say, a business or maybe an individual. So I'm going to, this time, let's say, make a pizza slice. Now, you can, of course, use a reference point for this, but a lot of us know kind of what a pizza slice roughly looks like. So to get started, I'm going to come up here to our rectangle tool that we started with before, and that is, of course, here under the star tool. Now, I can go ahead and do a rectangle tool, and I can round the corners if I want, or I can jump right to the rounded rectangle tool. And when I do rounded rectangle tool, you see that the corners are automatically rounded for me. And I can hit these anchor points if I want to round those a little bit more, which is what I want to do. I don't want them super round because that's about as far in as they'll go. But I want to round them just a little bit more to kind of give that kind of a more of a round slice effect. And we're just going to drag that up to the top page just so that's something to work with. Next, I want to then make a triangle. Now, a triangle you can't find under here, but it's actually hidden under the star tool. So if I go to star tool and hit 3, you can see that I can make a triangle that way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put this where I want it to be. I'm going to rotate it so that way that triangle is now upside down. I'm going to set that so it's aligning with the edge of our pizza slice. And let's go ahead and hold down the shift key as we drag until it reaches the other corner there. And you can see now I have the start of my slice of pizza. There's our crust, there's our main body of the pizza, but right now we don't have very many toppings on it. All right. So to do that, let's go ahead and make some toppings. So we're going to use, let's say, use a rectangle tool, and I'm going to use just a regular rectangle to represent, let's say, a slice of ham. I want a circle tool to represent a slice of pepperoni, but notice we don't have a circle tool, but we do have an ellipse tool, which is what we want. All right, so I'm just going to draw that, kind of make a nice round shape for a pepperoni. And maybe I want to also make something that's a little less conventional. How about like a mushroom shape? The reason why we wanted to make a mushroom is not necessarily because we like mushroom, but because it's a good way to demonstrate our abilities of what we can do in Illustrator. So with the polygon tool, if you just draw it, you can see it tries to make this shape. But we don't want just a regular polygon, right? Because if I just click, it just tells me how many points I can make. Right? I instead want to use a shape draw tool. Right? And there, of course, you can see there's other things in here that we've talked about briefly in the past before of ways we can make different objects in here. Right? All right, what we want is what's known as the curvature tool. Right? And let me just see if I can find that here. All right, that was looking right. It's right here. So I'm going to use the curvature tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to roughly try to draw a shape that represents a mushroom. So I'll just go ahead and start. If I click a point and then I click another point, you can see that it makes a straight line. If I don't want a straight line point, of course, if I start my anchor point here, and if I click another point, right, you can see that we have the options to be able to start bending points here. And you can see very quickly I can make something that's a little bit more curved. This is how we can get something that's a little bit more maybe representative of what we want. And so big things, make sure you close that off there. Right? And if I want to actually come in and edit these paths, so for example, this one right here, if I want to change the curve of these just a little bit, that's how we do it. So here's my mushroom tool. It's not the greatest point ever. Just bend that in just a little bit. Right? Not the greatest looking mushroom ever, but it gets the point across. So here is my 3 different shapes that I'm going to be using here. So I have my slice of ham, maybe just a little too thick, so I'm going to narrow it up. I got my pepperoni, and I got a mushroom. Next, what we want to do is color these shapes, so a little bit more representative of what we are working with here. So, for example, if I want a slice of pepperoni, maybe I want that to be kind of a red tone. So I can go ahead and change the color of that. All right, now there are ways we can apply colors. We can come right over here and choose on the color wheel here, for example, and I can choose to apply the color that way. Or if we come up here to Window and we look under right here, Swatch Libraries, we can actually look in here for some predefined colors in here. So like there's art history, celebration, colors, foods, for example, and right here is vegetables. And you can see there's some predefined tones in here. So maybe I want this pepperoni to be one of these more reddish tones that are available in here. Right? So you can use that as well. So let's say like the mushroom, I want that to be kind of more of a gray tone. So I might choose one of these grays in here. And this is ham, which is kind of more of a pink. So I'm going to maybe look for something that's a little more pink. If I don't have that, you can go ahead and you can look at different color swatches if you want. Or you can, of course, go right here to this color arrangement library and look for a color that you think is going to kind of best fill that color there. Right? And, of course, we also want to change the colors of these shapes here. So this is the crust of the pizza. So I'm going to want to give that, I don't want it just to be white. I want that to kind of have a nice color tone here. So I'm going to use my swatch library again. I'm going to go back to foods. Let's go look under vegetables again, see what they have. And I want something that's kind of a cheesy color. All right, so that one works right there. I can just go ahead and click on my crust. I want something kind of that's a bread color. Maybe a little too dark, too orange. So that might work. Maybe just a little darker. And if I'm not happy with this, I have the option to go right here to my color library, and I can pick out a color I think might be a little bit more representative of that pizza there. So there we go. We're getting one step closer, folks. Now let's go ahead and start adding these vegetables on. So we're going to just click off that, and we can just go ahead and kind of drag and drop the stuff onto here. Right. But before we do that, let's go ahead and grab these shapes here. We're just going to select them, and let's just kind of give them a little bit of a resize if we want, so we can make them larger or smaller depending on what we want. My shapes are pretty good size. You can also go to the individual shapes. Remember, holding on the Shift key, so I can make really big pepperoni slices, or I can make more medium-sized ones. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to kind of populate these pieces onto this pizza here. And I can, of course, just copy those over onto where I want them to be. And it's okay if they overlap the edges here because they're ultimately going to overlap them. And, of course, you can do things like you can rotate these slices if you want so that they're not all just evenly spread on there. So I'm going to put another mushroom on here. I'll put that there, and what I want to do is put the pepperoni on top. So call our good old layers panel here. So I'm going to go ahead and look for that pepperoni, which is right there. I want to make sure that that is over top of that mushroom I just drew. There we go. And maybe I'll put another slice or two of ham on here. And we want this one to rotate the other direction. And I don't necessarily want these all to be just nice and evenly looking. So I'll put one right here on the edge. Kind of rotate that one a little bit. There we go. And maybe I'll put one more somewhere right about in here, just to take up some of that white space. And again, put that pepperoni over top of its companion there. So there you go. All right, so we're going to use the shape builder tool next, and we want to get these pieces that are kind of hanging off the edge of the pepperoni here. So let me just use the selection tool. I want to select that slice there. And let's go to the shape builder tool, which is right here. Again, if you don't see it, it's right here. And I'm going to, if I hold over the minus pieces on these pieces that kind of dangle off the edge here, for example. Right, you can see like right now it's hovering on the inside of that pepperoni slice. That's not what I want. Instead, what I want it to do is get rid of the things on the inside of that slice. Right, so I might actually need to select all these shapes here and then go to my shape builder tool. And now if I hold down Alt, you can see I can click off these pieces that are hanging off of the edge here. And so now my pepperoni pizza looks a little more like a slice. Well, it looks like I missed one, so that's easy enough to do. Select it all again, go back to that shape builder tool, and just hit that little piece on there. Remember, the key thing is if you don't see this little minus sign, make sure you're holding down the Alt key. So I click that, and let's go ahead and click off. And now we have a slice of pizza kind of staring back at us. All right, so here's our nice, lovely slice that we've been dealing with. So we're going to come back to this beautiful thing. And you can see one thing I want to deal with is perhaps getting this crust to be on top. So I want to move that to the forward comparatively to the rest of these items here. So I'm just going to click that and drag that all the way back up to the top. So that way I can know that that crust is overlapping everything here. And then I'm going to drag over top of everything here so everything's selected. And what I want to do is put this pizza slice on an angle. So if I go to my corners here, I can say I get a little bit of rotation tool. I don't want to rotate this a ton, just enough so it's slightly at an angle. That should do. Maybe just a little bit more. That covers. Lost my selection. So just select it again. Come to the edge. Get a little more of a turn. There we go. So now we have our pizza slice here. And if we want to rotate that however we want, we can do that. Once I'm done though, I'm just going to click off and I can of course drag that down so it stays onto my canvas here. And what I want to do is maybe add a little dripping cheese effect because everybody knows that cheese is delicious. So I'm going to go back to my rectangle tool. And what I'm going to do is right off the corner of this here, I'm going to draw some quick and easy rectangles down here. So let's just go ahead and just draw some quick rectangles. They don't all need to be the same length or the same width. I'm just going to go ahead and draw them. I'm just going to go ahead and move that up there. And maybe make that one just a little bit wider. If I'm having difficulty, I can just zoom in. Delete the old one. I'll just draw a new one. Just want to go kind of across the two of those. And so now I have these shapes. Now I could use the merge shape property from the Pathfinder. Of course, we also have right here this shape builder tool. If I actually just drag across the three of these here, I should be able to grab these three shapes. So let me just go ahead and select those. I don't want to grab the one on top. And use our shape builder. Drag across the three of them. Right. It's giving me some difficulty, so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to, again, just drag those three, go up to Window, go to my Pathfinder, and let's go ahead and merge those. So now I have one shape, and what I want to do is round these corners just a little bit here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that shape, and let's just zoom in on that shape just a little bit more so we can see those corner edges just a little bit better. And I want to go ahead and bend these anchors inward. Right, I can't just pull inward like this because you see that it goes ahead and changes them. So I have to go to my direct selection tool and I have to grab these pathing buttons. And so I'm going to actually just kind of drag those inward just a little bit there so that those all kind of get a rounded sort of edge. Now though, if you look, that kind of dragged everything in here. I want to instead just drag the individual anchor. And you can see you can set different kind of anchor points in here, and that's fine. So I'm just going to drag that one corner, and then I can click on the other point there and drag that one in. And that allows me to give these corners some individual character too, so they're not all just doing one thing or another. So again, double click on the anchor, and you can bend those how you want them to be, rather than moving the entire shape at once. So this one maybe I want to come down a little bit more. Accidentally bent it too much. And a big bend. And we'll give that one just a slight bend. All right, now, one thing you will notice about this shape is that it's not really the color of our pizza here, but we can address that in a minute. So I'm just going to go ahead and hold down Alt and zoom out just slightly here. And let's go ahead and get this so that way this can line up with our pizza here. So I'm going to take that right up to the edge of that pizza there. And I can go ahead and rotate that so that way that lines up. So we just need a slight bit of more rotation. There we go. And we want that so that way that is the same color. And now you can see that this is slightly too large comparatively to where the ham is. So I'm just going to kind of move that a little bit there. And I'm going to go ahead and tell this to change colors. All right. Now we want this to be the exact same color as this here, so I can actually just use the color picker. I can pick that color, and boom, the cheese color is matched. Let's go ahead and use a Control-0 to see how that looks. If I click off, you can see I have that right there. The only issue is that we have that kind of a bit of a line there at the moment. All right, let me just go ahead and fix that up there just a little bit. I can actually just zoom in, and it just comes down to a matter of how I have these two pieces overlapping here. Right. So if I wanted to fix it, I can easily come in and change how they overlap to try and adjust that edge there. So see, now it doesn't look quite as bad. All right. Last thing we're going to do though is, let's go ahead and I'll just do a Control-0, is add some text to this. Now text of course can make the big difference in your logos of how they are presented. So it's always important to try and pick a text that really is representative of what you're doing. So when we do this, I'm just going to go ahead and make a text field over here, delete that out, and I'm going to go ahead and call this one, let's just call it pizza, if I can spell, slice. All right, so let's go ahead and jump this up. Let's make that like size 72. And let's add some other properties to it if we can. All right, so this pizza slice, let's go ahead and click right here on character, because this really gives us a lot more control over our text rather than just the font. So in here you can see we have different things, like for example all caps, small caps, superscript, subscript, underline, strike through, things that we're familiar with. We also have like character rotation, we have the horizontal scale, we have the tracking, we have the leading. So this is where we can come in here and really truly dive into doing a lot. So for example, if I go ahead and mess with the horizontal scaling and set like that to 150%, you can see that that stretches that text outwards over 150%. If I want to check the right here, the tracking, and I just want to mess around with that and just make that 5 points, or even make it a little bit larger, like 100, you can see how that really will mess around with my text in here. So there's a lot of different options that we can really kind of dive into here. Now I'm going to take this pizza slice here. Of course, I want to make this maybe a little bit larger than 72. Let's go ahead and make it like 100. So there's my pizza slice, and I'm just going to call it. It says pizza slice. Let's just make it into pizza by the slice. And I want those the all caps, so I'm just going to rewrite that. But these ones I may not want to be as stylized, so I'm going to go back to character in here. I'm going to set this value back to 0, and I'm going to set this slide, let's set that to 100. All right, and I want maybe by the to be on its own line, so I'm going to just hit enter. And so now I have pizza by the slice. And I want to maybe change this off Myriad Pro to maybe something more like trebuchet. All right, just so something a little different so we can look at that. And I want to change the color of this. And of course, I can use different things. I can go through and pick my own colors, but I'm going to use make it the same color as the crust there. And so you can see it now has that same property there as the crust. It's the exact same color. We can also affect things like the stroke. Maybe I can want to make that look just a little bit nicer, so I'm just going to up the stroke just a little bit, and I can go ahead and look at that text and say, wow, that looks pretty. I'm also going to make it bold. If I want, I can come over here to regular and make it bold. So now I have pizza by the slice. Set an exclamation point. So there is our new logo. Now the last thing that we're going to do today is we're going to put this over onto an artboard. So I'm just going to save this real quick if I want as Adobe Illustrator file. And I am going to go ahead and add an artboard. Now to do that, I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to go to Artboards. And all I'm going to do to add an artboard is I'm going to come right here and click on New Artboard. And it adds an artboard right to the side of this. So if I just kind of zoom out just a little bit here, you can see I have a second artboard here. Now I want to necessarily put this onto another artboard. I can just select everything here. If I drag this over to the next artboard, you can see it just moves it over. But I want to actually kind of drag that whole image and kind of copy that over. And the trick there is, if I want to keep a copy of it, I hold down the Alt key. So if I hold down the Alt key, I could just go ahead and copy that from one artboard right to another without having to try and copy and paste. It just drags everything right over. And that concludes our notes, folks. Until next time.